So, hello everyone. Thank you so much for coming on my podcast. It's Doers Within Emerging Markets, time for emerging markets, and I'm honored and privileged to have with me today the President of Babson College, Dr. Spinelli, and I'm really excited and I'm really humbled to have him here. So, welcome, President Spinelli.
It's a thrill to be with you. I have gained energy and excitement from being around people who aspire to do something important, and the work you're doing and the way you communicate and your enthusiasm for life and for building value is infectious, and I enjoy you a great deal.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the very kind words. And likewise, I definitely the 4 years I had at Babson, and you coming in when I was starting my Master's of Science in Finance program, just your leadership and how you navigated the COVID-19, which we'll probably get into that as well, was remarkable. So I learned a lot from you as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you
for this very kind words. So
we're both great Babson guys. You know, I'm a Babson graduate too.
Yeah.
So we got green running through our veins.
Exactly. Definitely. And just to go along with that, I just wanted to learn a bit, like just tell everyone about yourself, like where you're from, how you came, just like your childhood experience, what led you to Babson College and all that. What was it like growing up?
Yeah, sometimes I refer to my perspective on life as sort of family, community, aspiration, and tension. And there's an interesting mix of all of that. The family was very tight-knit, Italian-American family, very ethnically oriented family, very similar to sort of first-generation families in America across the spectrum of the country. And you understand that perspective, on immigration and what America is and all that stuff. Yeah. And that's the sort of the tight-knit family part. The community part is I grew up in an Italian-American neighborhood. It's funny when sometimes you forget you have to say that part, because I was growing up, I didn't think of myself as an American. I thought of myself as an Italian, which is really interesting because everybody around me spoke Italian, and everything we ate was Italian, and it was all of that. But there was also this sense of aspiration that you should believe in doing something more, but that you are almost required to do something more as part of your responsibility. So to do that, I had the sense that you had to break from the traditional boundaries of life, which could be the very close family unit and the neighborhood or that community. And you had to go out and explore. And so my early sort of upbringing was about that sense of community, but that responsibility to go do something sort of special. And frankly, I was also tired of being poor, to be perfectly honest about it. And there was a clear economic motivation around what I was going to do with my life. And that whole aspiration, how to manifest the American dream is not always clear in people's minds, and certainly wasn't in my mind what that meant. A lot of times it meant you go to school and you get A's, or you play on the baseball team, you hit a home run. Okay, now let's keep going. Hooray. Eventually you get to the point where you say, I'd like to buy some cool stuff, or I'd like a car, I'd like to eat, I'd like a nicer house. Exactly. I'd like to do that. Well, how do you do that? And that's where sort of the entrepreneurship thing got into me. I had the very good luck of going to a college, got a scholarship to a college. I played college football.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? Yeah. American football. I played. I wasn't talented enough to play soccer or your style of football, maybe. But I was tough enough to play American football. So played football, I got a scholarship. And my football coach in college, it was a tremendously interesting guy who spent his life as an entrepreneur. A lot in the healthcare business, but then went into everything. He loved starting businesses and growing businesses. And he sort of recruited me onto a team post-graduation. And eventually, I worked in his nursing homes. I learned from him. He mentored. There were 4 or 5 of us. Then he brought us all together and we started Jiffy Lube. And in starting Jiffy Lube, that was the first deep experience I had in entrepreneurship. It sort of thrown into the deep end. And during the Jiffy Lube experiences, when I found Babson, because I really believed that I needed more knowledge to understand how I was going to go through this experience and really create value. And I started taking my MBA at Babson, and at night I'd work in the Jiffy Lubes all day long and all week long, and at night I would go to school. And it was for the first time that whole thought and action paradigm. We talk about that a lot at Babson. Think deeply, act decisively, create value.
Definitely.
That became more clear to me as I would go to class and I would learn about entrepreneurship. And then I'd go back into the business and I'd say, well, what am I going to do about that? How do I now promulgate that philosophy and help grow this business? Very important to that was this mentality around growth. And that, I remember that, I still call him Coach. Which is I think probably everywhere, but in America certainly is a term of endearment. Or it certainly becomes a term of endearment. Definitely. He would say, listen, if you're going to start a business, you're going to work 24/7, 365. You might as well get rich. So if you're going to do that, you can't give any more. You might as well make a lot of money. And when there was a direct reflection of the value you create to the piece that you get, there is a synergy of sort of economic and social value that emerges. You're creating jobs, you're cleaning the environment, you're providing a service, you're taking care of cars. There was this growing sense of mission as a part of entrepreneurship, because it's really hard when you start a company. And we didn't have, the coach had money. The rest of us had to go borrow money to buy equity and work 3,000 hours a week and do all of that. So we really wanted to create value. There was a real intent. We believed in what we were doing, and we were able to grow it and eventually cash out. We ended up taking it public, and I ended up cashing out after about 14 years in Jiffy Lube. And that's when I came back to Babson and said, I'm looking for my next round of whatever I'm going to do. And the education was so important. And there's a guy at Babson, there were 2 guys at Babson that were real mentors for me. A guy named Jeff Timmons, who has passed, was just a genius. And do you know the name Jeff Timmons?
I think it sounds familiar. It sounds familiar, but I think it's a remarkable person I hear.
Yeah, he was a remarkable guy. And he was one of the guys who wrote the first textbook, one of the first textbooks.
Exactly.
And one of his 3rd or 4th or 5th edition of that, he invited me to co-author with him. It was a great honor, but it really did, that embedded the whole academic side of me. And I went off and got a PhD in London, and then came back and I taught at Babson. But I've always remained at this intersection of thought and action. I really think that's where most excitement is. The scholarship is really important. The teaching is so exciting. Starting a business is so rewarding and so enriching. And when you put them together, it's a really great and fulfilling life. One of my current role is as president of Babson, but it's also as chairman of the board of Planet Fitness, which is one of the largest fitness companies in the world now. And watching that new concept grow, one of the best business models I've ever seen in my life, and one of the most fulfilling experiences I've ever had. And it maintains this thought and action linkage, this interwoven set of capabilities and perspectives that drives you to create value.
Yes, exactly.
That's an exciting, and that's what we teach at Babson.
Yes, exactly. You've basically answered most of the questions already. but I think for most of the audience who really love, when you got appointed as new president, I remember this was my last semester of my MBA program. So this is 2019, if I remember correctly. And when we found out that you were the founder of one of the co-founders of Jiffy Lube, it was really exciting because I've seen Jiffy Lube around. I was like, wow, the first, I mean, and in addition to the fact that I went to Babson College, as you mentioned already, for as an evening student while you're working on Jiffy Lube. I think one thing that people be curious about is how did you and your partners scaled Jiffy Lube to become a national company, right? Like, become a franchise company. I think that's something that people will be curious to learn about and how you guys navigated that.
Yeah, there's both the sort of the mental model we've had and then the business model we have. The mental model was super interesting because it was really driven by the coach, and it was a lesson that I really did learn and keep with me. The whole thing about if you're going to work your fingers to the bone, you might as well get rich. There is a sense of growth in that. You have to aspire to do something bigger with that, and so it was really funny when we were going to name the company, the doing business as Jiffy Lube. So that was the trade name, was Jiffy Lube. But then what was the company name? And we said, well, it'll be Jiffy Lube Inc. What the heck?
Yeah.
And the coach said, no, I don't think so. It doesn't say enough. And I was a young guy. I didn't know what the heck he was talking about. And he said, what is our real motivation here? Jiffy Lube make a lot of money. Jiffy Lube get big. What? And he said, well, you're closer with the get big. And then one of us, it wasn't me, and it wasn't the coach, somebody else said, how about Jiffy Lube International? Mm-hmm. And we said, we're in. That's the deal. That's what we're going to call it. And, we had like 2 stores at this time. But the mentality was that if we're doing something special, we should be able to grow this, and that we would aspire to do more. And that had a profound effect on the way I think about high potential ventures and growth and creating value.
Exactly. And I think that says a lot. And I think it also echoes to how your personal story was like, how you grew up, and that mindset that you had intersected with, Babson's entrepreneurial thought and action, which has led you to being the president of Babson College. So I think one thing that was truly remarkable that up to today is something that looking back, let me say 20 years from now, if we look back to how you managed the COVID pandemic in Babson, I would say it was one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen. I remember when the COVID hit in March of 2020, and the way Babson as a community and the emails you sent out and how you just coordinated the professors, how you coordinated the students, it was truly seamless. And it was something that I can see, 20 years from now, I think some people echo how your leadership and your experience and just how you managed the crisis was just outstanding. Can you just share a little bit, because I think that's like the pinnacle of your experience as the president of Babson College, but also how your leadership came through and how I can see was one of the best examples of how you led an organization, right? As a very remarkable leader. Can you just share a little bit about how the COVID pandemic was managed from the beginning and how you successfully led Babson to this point where I can say we're at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, Jacob, thank you. That was a very kind statement. Sure. But it is, I think it is, the COVID and the management of COVID, first of all, is probably the most persistently intense management experience of my life. There's one thing that you say, okay, we've got to do this right if we want to make money. There's another thing when you say we got to do this right if we want to stay alive. There's additional motivation there that is pretty profound. Yes. And it's been a growing, stressful and growing experience for me, which is part of what the entrepreneurial process does. It stresses your muscles, it creates that tension. And if you can manage it well, and if you're training right, you build bigger muscles. You don't pull or break muscles. Exactly. So COVID is doing that. It also is a metaphor for the the rapid pace of change in society, and the rapid pace of change in all industries. And I don't think we won't maybe be at this pace, but we're not going to go back to a slower pace. There will be a continually increased number of variables and the way those variables change and interact. And COVID is the introduction to the to the era of rapid change and ambiguity. And so that is the field in which entrepreneurs most thrive. And so what we did in the COVID, when COVID first came, was to get everybody together and talk about what were going to be the guiding principles for our decision making. What is value creation in a college, at Babson College? What do we mean by value creation? And we came to a very quick decision that it was going to be health and safety of the community and academic continuity and excellence. And that every decision we made would be based on these principles of value creation. Exactly. And that was such an important first step, because we could then say, okay, what are the variables we're dealing with? Infection rates, the need for PPE, ability to teach online, physical structures, communications. All of that became a matter of creating an inventory of understanding. What are the variables and how do they react? And how can we use those variables to fulfill our overarching principles, those guiding principles of health and safety of the community and academic continuity and excellence. And to this day, that remains the two guiding principles we have. We then said, what are the timelines and what is the management environment that we're in and will likely have to progress to? So it was not only where are we today, but where are we going with this, even though we're not exactly sure, but we know that time will keep pushing us forward. And we came, I'm a retailer at heart, Planet Fitness, Jiffy Lube, I'm a retailer. So I like succinct phrases. And we talked about survive, because we don't know what this infection is going to do. And health and safety is the most important thing. We better make sure that we are really concentrating on survival. But that, if we get that right, we're going to have to then revive this organization. And we'll go from survive to revive, and we'll revive it for the purpose of thriving. So that became this sort of cute mantra, serious but cute mantra we had, that was survive, revive, and thrive. What we have learned in this, and honestly, Jacob, my first sense was these were linear progressions. We'll survive, then we'll revive, then we'll thrive. And what I'm finding is that they're integrated progressions, that you have to survive, but then you weave in revival, and then you grow to survival, and they're all interwoven. So you're always thinking about, am I doing the right thing? Health and safety of the community, academic continuity. What am I learning from that? And how can I bring that into a new business model? Will that new business model create something really special? And what have we learned that can give us a competitive advantage and add excellence to what we're doing? So it's not just academic continuity, but it's excellence, and maybe superior business model will emerge from this. When you get the excitement about the aspiration, all this hard work and lost sleep and money that we're investing, all this pain we're going through is going to mean better education. And I think that is accelerated Babson's ability to deliver quality business education by 5 or 10 years. Yep. I think when we're starting to see a little bit of light with a vaccine, thank you. So, we're feeling like let's build this knowledge into a model that says, maybe we can have an impact. I like saying this, Jacob. Yep. I want to have an impact on higher education. I want to change business education. I want to revolutionize entrepreneurship education. So, and COVID has taught us so much about how entrepreneurship was a competitive advantage. I think it now is a required competency. Exactly. The entrepreneurial mind must deal with ambiguity and multiple variables and nonlinear progressions, and you have to make decisions and pivot quickly, and you have to learn from mistakes and grow from them very quickly. And you can't look back. You've got to be looking forward and racing ahead. You have to come together as a teamwork. You have to see an ecosystem, not just an organization. All of those lessons of entrepreneurship have been concentrated in the last year, and I think that gives us a competitive advantage. I'm excited about the future. I'm
I can
scared to death
tell.
about tomorrow.
I
I'm
can
excited about the future.
I can tell you have some this infectious entrepreneurial energy that and the thing is, like, even through your emails, at heart I could feel how how you really wanted to use this as an opportunity to bring the community together, to actually draw in people's entrepreneurial DNAs, in people's entrepreneurial visions, and how that could be in part of the Babson history and also part of Babson's story. So I could actually see it through your emails and through the forms of communication that you built throughout the course of this unprecedented period. So it's truly remarkable. It's truly infectious, and I think something that a lot of people admire from you as the president, actually, that helped Babson grow Babson, as I said, the 3 stages integrated to new heights. And I've recommended Babson to a lot of people just to apply, based on the fact that you are at the head, and I know that it's a remarkable area to study. I know you mentioned a lot about Planet Fitness, and I know you are on the board of Planet Fitness. Can you just please just share a little bit about Planet Fitness and what you do there, if you can?
Yeah. No, it's a public company, so a lot of this is public information, and I won't tell you anything that isn't public information. But it is a remarkable story. It is a story of two brothers and another guy, a friend, who loved to work out and didn't have a job. So they built a gym so they could work out and have a job. I mean it really was that simple. It wasn't this big vision of, it was, we want to work out and we need to have a job, so we got to get paid. And they built this gym, but they would go to gyms, and especially the one who is now the CEO, who's just a terrific guy, Chris. And Chris would still looks like he could lift an automobile. I don't know how old he's, probably 50 or 48 or something, but it looks like it could lift a car. But they didn't like the typical atmosphere of a gym, where it was what they would call lunkheads would go in and they drop the weights and they grunt, and you're always going to be a little bit uncomfortable. And it was intuitive to them that if you're uncomfortable in a business, you'll go there less and you'll spend less money and you'll have less enjoyment and there is less value. They said, what if we could create an atmosphere where people really felt comfortable, and the biggest, strongest guys and the weakest, oldest men could feel very comfortable and respected and respectful of each other in that environment? Wouldn't that be a cool place?
Yeah.
So I said, let's build a gym that is more about community than it is about muscles. And it is a remarkable cultural phenomenon. Taught me a lot about business models. The great business models that can grow are cultures. They're communities. They're not a series of transactions. They're people engaging. And when you think about an ecosystem or a community, you think about the interrelationships. You don't think of one-offs. And too often in business, we talk about market demand being the decision of one person on one transaction, instead of a community understanding and a cultural belief that can grow and become big and bigger than that transaction would indicate. So they did things like, if you go into a Planet Fitness, there's a bell you can ring. And if somebody's grunting, it's the lunkhead bell. You ring the bell and an alarm goes off and it says lunkhead, lunkhead. Now, almost nobody ever rings that anymore, because people have built a community where you don't do that kind of stuff, that you are respectful. And, from the oldest ladies who are very nice, sir, would you like to use this machine now? There's this sort of culture of no judgment. It's just fantastic. That also created a business model that was more self-organizing and self-managed. So in Babson terms, the labor costs went way down. You didn't have to manage those interactions as acutely, and they happened so socially that they were uplifting, that the costs in the model, the labor costs in the model, were far lower than most other people. Then they found out that it really attracted, that 80% of the population never goes to a gym. 80%.
Wow.
And they said, well, at one end, for the really high end, you're paying $200 a month or $250 a month, and there's lots of trainers and you have to wear special clothes and look really great when you go in and do all of that. And then you have people who might go to the YMCA and the vast majority of people didn't go in. They said, well, why don't we build gyms for them? Why don't we build gyms for the 80%? Oh my God, that's hundreds of millions of people. Exactly. That's a big deal. And they started building that. Now, interestingly, the pricing model again emerged in very strange way. They open up the first gym and they say, you got to pay up front, and they were struggling. Yeah. So they said, okay, this won't work. What do we do? Well, maybe we just tell the people in our gym, that's one gym, just pay us $10 a month. So they were trying to get enough cash just to keep the doors open. Yeah. You come as much as you want. You can cancel whenever you want. And people said, what? That doesn't make sense. Yes. And they thought it through and they said, wait a minute, we have a bunch of fixed costs and not a lot of variable costs. So if we get those fixed costs covered, then every dollar over that, there's a huge margin. Yep. So the contribution margin could be huge. If we get a base, we just let's keep it super clean and get all the equipment they want to use. So they went away there's lots of weights in the bigger stores now, but a lot of cardio. They said, we like cardio, we want to walk, we want to use a treadmill, we want to run. A lot of cardio, $10 a month, no commitment. Let's see what happens. The doors blew open. Yeah. They had so many customers, they couldn't believe it. So they built a second one. Same thing, a third one, same thing. Now they had to think about how do we grow rapidly. And they started thinking about, then we got into the franchise idea. They got into the franchise idea. Then they said, wow, this is really getting big. Let's bring in some franchise experts. They had a couple of hundred stores. That's when I joined the board. And I said, wow, you have a tiger by the tail, gentlemen. And they saw it. I mean, they're brilliant guys and they did an amazing job with the company. We built it out. We had private equity money. We went public. We now have been public. And we've topped, we're a little over 2,100 units now, and we've become international. Exactly. The market is huge. Yeah, we're the #1 fitness company in the world.
That's amazing.
That's fun.
That's fun.
It's not fun during COVID. We had to close them all.
That's what I was trying to ask. That was my next question. How did you manage with COVID? I know COVID is kind of the center of this conversation. But,
well, it's the center of life in a lot of ways as we speak. Well, it's interesting. It's painful. I will tell you, closing stores is painful. The two things that make us, I think, exceptional in the marketplace. One is it's a relatively low cost, is very low cost entry fee for customers. So customers stayed with us. A lot of members stayed, even though we weren't billing them during the times we were closed, but they didn't cancel. They said, you know what, when you open, we'll come back. Wow. So you could project into the future a revenue stream, and frankly, that's what's happened, which is just really amazing. The other thing is that franchising is a really cooperative, a collaborative form. So we've got a lot of franchisees who are superb entrepreneurs that really know their stores, they know their customers, they know their employees, they know their communities. They're engaged in those communities. The communities, the customers have faith in them. They care deeply about those businesses and about their employees and their customers. And during the really tough times, that is the proof of the pudding. And people say, well, we know these people. We know they're good for their word. We know they'll reopen. They had economic strength. We had a lot of franchisees who had done really well, so they could sustain their employees in their stores through this. And that's where scale and the franchise system really gave us a competitive advantage. We now have most of those stores reopened, and we're beginning to look at our revive. We've got into revive. We're looking into our thrive period and thinking, boy, the future for Planet Fitness is pretty bright.
Definitely. I think for everything you've been involved in, there's a sense of community there, this sense of entrepreneurial thought and action, and this sense of just resilience. I think that's something that
a great word.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great word. Because I don't care who you are, you get knocked down. Yeah. And you have to. No failure is final. But it's a lesson for the next success.
Yeah. Exactly, and I think I couldn't think of any person to be in charge of Babson based on what I've heard now than you, because it sounds like you're built for this moment at
Well,
Babson
you don't get to choose your time.
Yeah.
The world imposes certain things on you, and you say, do I want to play, or am I going to withdraw? Am I going to engage this and try to create value, or am I going to shrink from it? But that's the entrepreneurial environment that I think we're going to see for a long, long time.
Exactly.
And that's why education has to catch up and tell students that it is dealing with ambiguity. That is the real skill of the entrepreneur. It is being able to take multiple variables and synthesize them into decision making. And when it doesn't work, you got to pivot.
Exactly.
Do you know, now you're not an American, or are you? Are you an American?
Yeah, I'm an American citizen now. Yeah.
When did you become a citizen?
2017, February.
We're a very lucky country. Thank you, and welcome home.
The first year of the. Oh yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, God bless you, man. We need more like you.
Definitely.
But there's a famous American baseball player named Babe Ruth.
Babe Ruth, yes.
You know Babe Ruth?
I've heard, okay. Yes.
Babe Ruth, recently he got his record broken, but he had hit more home runs than anybody by a lot. The year he hit 60 home runs, the record before that might have been 30 home runs. So, I mean, he just blew away all the records.
Yeah.
And he would say, if you're afraid to strike out, don't come to the plate. So, he hit a lot of home runs, but he struck out too. And if you're afraid to strike out, and too many people are afraid to strike out, so they don't come to the plate. So let's get up to bat and swing away. Let's do all the hard work, and let's understand the game, and let's be in shape. And that's what entrepreneurship education helps you understand. What does this mean? How do I take all those variables? How do I make those quick pivots?
Exactly.
And the world has so many opportunities, Jacob, especially post-pandemic. I think there is going to be another flourishing of entrepreneurial behavior to build new business models, to deal with new mentalities, to deal with new realities, new thoughts and views. I think that we are faced with a golden age.
Definitely. And just to segue into that, and I know you're the president of Babson, you have to go back to run your daily duties with many other things you have. So I just have two more questions.
Okay.
So, I mean, this podcast is to enlighten entrepreneurs in emerging markets, right?
Yes.
And to help them understand that in spite of the challenges or, how enormous the problems might be, there is an opportunity to make a difference, right? And one of the things that hopeful is that from the speakers or the guests that comes on the podcast, they give them these practical tools on how to just navigate some of these challenges, which you have done in remarkable ways, and I'm more than grateful for that. For your experience, just starting companies or even interacting with people from emerging markets or emerging economies, what is your take of the next phase of emerging markets, and what do you think people have to be thinking about if they want to start a business, let's say somewhere in Africa or somewhere in Southeast Asia or Latin America?
Yeah, I have a dear friend who I did my PhD. We were office mates in London, who is a Ghanaian entrepreneur, and he does a lot of export from West Africa to around the world. A lot of time in the United States, but Asia, Europe, the whole thing. And he sees the emerging markets as if there is a golden age of entrepreneurship on the way, the emerging markets may be a platinum age for emerging markets. And there's a couple of phenomenon that's going on there. The first one is the level of communication and ability to be transnational or multinational is far greater today. The infrastructure, the language, the technology, the supply chains, the mentality, the funding. There is a much more global attitude, and if you're thinking big, you can scale small businesses in pretty dramatic ways, and developing businesses in pretty dramatic ways. He would also say, if there weren't any problems in emerging countries, there would be less opportunity. He said, that his biggest problem is having a hierarchy of opportunities and making sure he's taking the best of the opportunities, because there are so many problems and so many people who want to be a part of this, and now a network of infrastructure and capital that will support that. That speaks to networking as an important phenomenon. You think about it, sort of social networking through digital communication digital communication sort of started social networking, and there are these massive economic and educational networks are catching up. But that provides entrepreneurs with the ability to get to scale much more rapidly and to bring lots of solutions into countries and from countries. So he believes that the infrastructure is so now available, especially the capital infrastructure. He's able to get lots of funding from lots of different places now, where it used to be centralized in Accra or in his country. Now there's funding that can come from the World Bank, comes from London, some from the United States, and he's finding ways to grow companies. And the economic networking is a dramatic support of that capital and general infrastructure to grow. So, I mean, part of the lesson, there's a couple of lessons here. One is there's a lot of problems, go solve a problem. And the bigger the problem you're solving, the more the value you can create. The second one is that collaboration now is an underpinning of almost every business. And people are looking for entrepreneurs who understand how to network and how to put different networks and infrastructure together. So understand what your value chain is in your business, where you are in that value chain, and bring those people together with an understanding of how you're creating value for them and how the greater value chain is going to scale to a bigger sense of value. And then 3 is to learn the language of communication, financial communication, entrepreneurial knowledge, so that you're talking across that value chain and you're communicating in terms that people understand. And maybe 4th, if they understand your values and you have aligned values and you have all of that in place, you're crazy not to do the deal, and people will do the deal. So they are seeking that kind of inspired growth and looking at developing countries as real pockets of opportunity.
Definitely. I mean, that's, I wish I could have you longer. So much word of knowledge. Yeah, you actually make me feel like I have to stay up all night today just working on my project.
You're a good, but that's how Babson students think. They're never satisfied. They got to keep going just a little bit more. I can learn more. Wonderful attitude. I love you, Jacob.
Yeah, definitely. More than humble to have you. And just the final question. So people, I know this year things are looking a little bit brighter. But you still have, people are still struggling. People are still trying to figure out, how to get by and how to make this year a better year than last year. Any last minute words of motivation or inspiration to Babson students? Some of my classmates listen to this podcast, and so my friends in Africa, just around the world. What is your
Jacob, I really do believe we are on the cusp of revival here. And that, in the darkest hour is the potential for the greatest light.
I like that.
And I really believe if you stay focused on those principles of social and economic value and think about scale and growth and maintain that entrepreneurial mindset, there is more value to be created. There is more money to be made. There is more impact to be had, maybe in the next 5 or 10 years than there was in the last 50 years. You are in the catbird seat to have a leadership position in this world, and shame on you if you don't get it done.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. It's such
God bless you, Jacob.
God bless you too.
It's an honor to have you as an alum, and actually, the way I look at it, you're my boss. You're the alum, you're the shareholder. I answer to you, and I want to do a good job for you.
Oh, no, it's such an honor. Thank you so much. I'd love to have you again sometime.
You anytime, and if there are other people you'd like to talk to from Planet Fitness or some of the other businesses I'm involved with, let me know, and I'd be happy to have them on your podcast. They're wonderful people.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. President. Have a wonderful time.
Thank you, Jacob.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.